no college sees a reduction in 25-26 compared to 24-25. As Mr Rowley pointed out, there is an increase in overall funding for Fife College of 1.26%, and I understand that discussions are ongoing between the SFC and Fife College. But I do just say gently to Mr Rowley, one of the additional pressures that the college is facing as he talks about the inflationary challenges is the employer national insurance contribution situation, and I'm sure he knows full well from where that pressure has come.
Willie Rennie.
There is absolutely no way that Fife College asked for a real terms cut in its budget. That's why the Government needs to think again along with the Funding Council, because the potential in Fife is huge. We've got oil and gas jobs that are fading out. We've got offshore renewable potential, which is huge, as well as all the other sectors. So surely the Minister must understand that we cannot throw away that opportunity.
Minister.
Presiding Officer, the changes in allocations reflect the number of high-tariff courses that each institution offers, and that is what the institutions looked, as a collective, looked for to be recognised. But in addition to Fife College's excellent work that they're undertaking with the SFC on curriculum transformation, which is potential for them, I am open to exploring whether we could add a further premium into the mix, one which recognises delivery of courses linked to local and national economic need, and which might provide a balancing mechanism, if you like, in some instances. So I am open to exploring that.
Question number 7, Liam MacArthur.
Good. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on its plans to introduce a cruise ship levy, including the option for local authorities to apply a point of entry levy.
Cabinet Secretary Shona Robertson.
On the 27th of February, the Scottish Government commenced a consultation on the potential to give local authorities the power to introduce a cruise ship levy. That consultation closes on the 30th of May, and we will consider next steps in due course after the responses have been analysed.
Liam MacArthur.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response? She'll recall from the discussions during the passage of the visitor levy legislation the concerns I raised about the ability of local authorities such as Orkney Islands Council to introduce a visitor levy without a similar levy applying to cruise traffic, but the administration costs of that would be significant. So I was encouraged by the consultation launched back in February that did include the possibility of a cruise ship levy, but also the possibility of a point of entry charge. This is something that has been backed by Destination Orkney as a way of making it fairer, simpler and more equitable. So I appreciate the consultation is ongoing, but will the Cabinet Secretary please give an undertaking to look very seriously at the option of a point of entry levy?
Cabinet Secretary.
So can I reassure Liam MacArthur that the consultation it provides a suitable opportunity to ask for views on a point of entry levy, as this has been raised with Scottish ministers. Further detailed consideration will be required on the potential impacts for local authorities, tourism bodies and visitors before making any decisions on whether to move ahead with any point of entry levy.
Brief supplementary, Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can the Cabinet Secretary provide an update on what assessment the Scottish Government has made of the positive impact which cruise ships and their passengers make to not just Scotland's tourism economy as a whole, but also to the economies of the local communities where the ships dock?
Cabinet Secretary.
There is some uncertainty around how much passengers and crews spend on shore per day. In the published BRIA, the Scottish Government presented a range of estimates of the overall passenger and crew spending on shore in Scotland in 2024, and this ranged from 55 million to 102 million. Of course, the spending will generally be concentrated around the port where the cruise ship is docked, although passengers may, of course, travel further from some ports than others. The BRIA highlights some local surveys that identified benefit from increased visitor spending at local attractions, increased footfall in town centres and new employment opportunities.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. There will be a brief pause before we move on to the next item of business. 80 years ago, after years of living with the brutality of war, the guns across Europe fell silent. We honour the generation that gave so much to secure our peace and freedoms. We owe it to them to strive for that peace, to remember and to encourage future generations to remember. Please join me in observing the national 2-minute silence as we reflect with gratitude, marking the 80th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day. And please join me in standing if you are able. Thank you. I call the First Minister.
Presiding Officer, on this, the 80th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day, Scotland pays tribute to our Second World War generation. We express our gratitude for the 57,000 individuals from Scotland who lost their lives in military conflict during World War II, and to the many civilians also killed and injured at home. They gave of themselves so that we could enjoy freedom today. We will all naturally think about how the lives of our own families were affected. I think of my uncle, Thomas Hunter, killed in Italy protecting his comrades 35 days before the end of the war, posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross by King George VI, with an inscription written on the Bible given to my grandmother in his memory, the words of St. John, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down their life for their friends." The lessons and the suffering of the Second World War must be remembered today so that we all act to protect the freedom and the democracy that we have enjoyed as a result. Together, we give thanks and dedicate ourselves to building a better, safer and more peaceful world.
Thank you. I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you. 80 years ago today, the guns fell silent across Europe. At 3 p.m. on the 8th of May 1945, Prime Minister Winston Churchill made a radio announcement to the people of our country. After 6 long and dark years of death and destruction, victory for Britain and our allies against Nazi Germany was secured. World War II was the largest and deadliest conflict in history. It involved more than 50 nations and was fought on land, sea and air. Globally, it is estimated that as many as 85 million lives were lost. tens of thousands of Scots were killed at home and abroad. And to those of us who have only ever known peace and prosperity, the horrors of war are unimaginable. None of us here can truly appreciate the selfless sacrifice, duty and bravery of the greatest generation who fought and died for our freedom. Today, Victory in Europe Day, we remember them.
Thank you. I call Anna Sarwar.
Today on VE Day, we pause to remember the courage, sacrifice and unity that brought an end to the war in Europe 80 years ago. We honour those who served on the front lines and those who kept life going at home. In Scotland, Britain and beyond, we remember those who gave everything for the fight against fascism, the greatest tyranny we have ever faced. Their bravery shaped the democracy we cherish today. But remembrance must also inspire responsibility. First and foremost to those who served and to those who serve our country today. And we must protect those freedoms, stand up to hatred and division, and build a fairer, more compassionate country, just as that generation hoped we would. We remember them, we thank them, and we pledge to carry their values forward. And we continue to strive for a world at peace.
Thank you. I call Lorna Slater.
On this 80th anniversary, marking the end of a dark chapter in history, we remember the sacrifices made by all who stood against the tyranny of fascism. Their courage and resilience ensured our freedom, peace and democracy. We will forever be grateful to them. Peace is not merely the absence of war, but also the presence of harmony, understanding and cooperation amongst nations. Yet currently we are witnessing the horrors of genocide continuing in Gaza, and fascism reappears, threatening democracy and human rights as the far right rises across the world. We cannot be complacent in the face of growing threats of fascism, international violence, hatred and oppression. We must continue to strive to build a world where peace endures and the horrors of the past are not repeated. We must remain vigilant and united in our efforts to create lasting peace by supporting democracy, justice and human rights for all.
Thank you. I call Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Presiding Officer, today we commemorate the moment when 80 years ago the High Command of the Allied forces received the unconditional surrender of the Third Reich. Whilst war still raged in the Pacific, for the first time in 6 years, across these islands, the tension, grind and privations of wartime gave way to lasting peace. In a radio broadcast to the British people and to the world, King George VI said, "On this day of just triumph and proud sorrow, let us take up our work again, resolved as a people to do nothing unworthy of those who died for us, and to make the world such a world as they would have desired, for their children and for ours." His words ushered in the long peace that most of us have only ever known. As we give thanks today for the sacrifice laid down by the generations to come before us, we must rededicate ourselves to the promise of that peace and its furtherance for our children and theirs to come.
Thank you. The next item of business is First Minister's questions. At question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you. This week's programme for government promises to deliver 100,000 more GP appointments. But Public Health Scotland says that over the past year there were 500,000 fewer GP appointments than in the year before John Swinney became First Minister. BMA Scotland says the SNP's pledge is equivalent to just one extra day of appointments, an increase of less than 1%, and that's if the SNP even delivers it. Public Health Scotland data also reveals that in the first 3 months of 2025, the number of GP appointments was the worst on record. The SNP's programme for government is a pathetic con. Is the limit of John Swinney's ambition to undo a small amount of the damage inflicted by John Swinney?
First Minister.
So the programme for government set out the steps that we are taking to expand capacity within the health service to meet the demand for appointments with GPs. Yes, it includes the delivery of 100,000 additional appointments that will be available through GPs to look at particular high-risk factors such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity and smoking. But there will also be an expansion of the availability of Pharmacy First services, which are designed to meet healthcare needs of individuals where relevant, and also includes the expansion of the availability of allied health practitioners within frontline healthcare services, with a commitment to expand the funding available to primary care services as a greater proportion of new NHS funding. The combination of these factors will make an impact on the access to GP services in Scotland.
Russell Finlay.
So after 18 years of failure, John Swinney is now desperately trying to clear up the mess that his government has made. Now, BMA Scotland says that government rhetoric is failing to match reality, and the Royal College of General Practitioners of Scotland say they, quote, simply don't have the workforce capacity to deliver the 100,000 extra appointments. The way to increase appointments is to increase the number of GPs. The SNP promised 800 more, but that hasn't happened. They constantly make big pledges about the NHS, but always fail patients. The SNP never keep their word. So why should anyone believe John Swinney will keep his latest promise when the SNP break them all the time?
First Minister.
First of all, Presiding Officer, the number of GPs has increased. In 2017, there were 4,904 GPs. There's now 5,211 on latest statistics. The second point is that the government is putting in place arrangements on the 100,000 appointments as a consequence of negotiating that agreement with the self-same organisations that Mr Finlay has referred to. So what the people of Scotland know from my government is that we are absolutely focused on delivering on the issues of concern to the people of Scotland. Part of that is about improving access to the National Health Service, and as I set out to Parliament on Tuesday, this government is absolutely focused on delivering on the people's priorities.
Russell Finlay.
He says he's focused on delivery, he's focused on spin. Now let's look at the SNP's record on the NHS. They published an NHS recovery plan at the start of this Parliament. They claimed it would, and I quote, drive the recovery of our NHS not just to its pre-pandemic level, but beyond. Now, my party quite rightly condemned Humza Yousaf's plan as embarrassingly thin and flimsy, and it turns out the SNP agreed with us. We now know what Nicola Sturgeon really thought of her government's big plan. She said, and I quote, "My specific concern is that it's awful." For once, Nicola Sturgeon was right. Now, John Swinney was COVID Recovery Secretary at this time, so he must have had a view on it too. So what words would he use to describe it?
First Minister.
President, I don't think it's a particular revelation for Parliament to hear that the Conservatives condemned something. They condemn absolutely everything. They've got nothing. They've got absolutely.
Let's hear one another.
They've got absolutely nothing constructive to contribute to the debate. So let me just say to Mr Finlay that under my term in office as First Minister, we promised to carry out 64,000 extra appointments by the end of March 2025, and we didn't do that. We didn't do that because we delivered 105,500 extra appointments and procedures over that timescale, and we will deliver more in the forthcoming parliamentary year. So let me just say to Mr Finlay, so that he's not worried about this in the future, there will be more delivery by this government in the course of the next 12 months, and I'll be very happy to answer parliamentary questions about that, not just before the election, but after the election, when I remain First Minister.
Russell Finlay.
It was a simple question, but I'm not really surprised that John Swinney isn't prepared to come clean about what he thought at the time, because this is a dishonest government addicted to secrecy.
Mr Finlay, let's carry out our business in a courteous manner.
We saw this when Nicola Sturgeon and John Swinney deleted their messages that should have been provided to the UK COVID inquiry. We see it with the SNP wasting taxpayers' money on a shameful cover-up about their NHS recovery plan. They spent 4 years hiding the truth from the public about what Nicola Sturgeon really thought. Humza Yousaf's plan caused waiting lists to rise, not fall. It was flimsy rubbish, as we said. Nicola Sturgeon and John Swinney both knew. But the SNP hid the truth from the public, so Humza Yousaf failed upwards. John Swinney helped Nicola Sturgeon's awful Health Secretary become an awful First Minister. If the SNP had been honest and transparent, would Humza Yousaf have become First Minister?
First Minister.
What an absolutely miserable contribution to parliamentary discourse. It really is. It is completely and utterly. It's all the Conservatives have got left. They're in such a... I don't know why Rachel Hamilton's laughing, because...
Let's hear one another. We have observers in the gallery. We have people tuning in online. Let's make sure that we can all hear what's being said.
The public cast a judgment on the Conservative Party last Thursday, and it was pretty damning indeed about the future of the Conservative Party. What the public are interested in, and what I'm interested in, is delivering on the priorities of the people of Scotland. And right at the heart of the Government's programme is investment to support increased capacity in the National Health Service, so that we deliver more GP appointments, better access to GP services, and we get waiting lists down. That's going to preoccupy my thinking as First Minister, and I'm going to leave Mr Finlay to sit on the sidelines, as he does every week, throwing insults around, contributing nothing. I'm going to deliver for the people of Scotland.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, this week, after 18 years in office, the SNP conceded that they have no plan, are out of steam and have lost their way. John Swinney announced a bland and unambitious programme for government that does nothing to address the issues that Scotland faces. No plan to fix the NHS crisis created by the SNP. No plan to deal with the falling standards and sorry violence in our schools presided over by the SNP. And no plan to end the scandal of 10,000 homeless children on John Swinney's watch. But when a member of this Parliament raised the issue of homeless children, John Swinney shamefully told them, and I quote, to find something else to moan about. In a damning assessment, Shelter Scotland called John Swinney's plan a programme for homelessness. Does he think they should find something else to moan about?
First Minister.
Trying to set out to Parliament on Tuesday was the fact, and I may have used language that was particularly not worthy of me, so if I've done that and people are concerned about that, then of course I regret if I've used language that's not been appropriate for the way I go about my business. But let me just come back to the facts of all of this. So the facts of all of this is that since 2007, when this government came to office, we've delivered 47% more affordable homes per head of population than in England and 73% more than in Wales. In addition, in last year, we've had more house building completions in Scotland per 10,000 people in Scotland compared to England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And we're also just passed a budget which Mr Sarwar didn't support, which is investing £768 million in affordable housing investment in Scotland. So we are addressing the homelessness issues that we face in our society. We're taking action to support local authorities in tackling void accommodation. We'll continue to do that, and we'll focus on making sure we address the needs of people in Scotland.
Anna Sarwar.
The fact is that we have 10,000 homeless children, and John Swinney has no plan to deal with it. Now, he said the focus of his programme for government was fixing the NHS that he and his colleagues in the SNP have broken. But yet again, the details prove that they have no idea how to fix the mess they created. It's so bad that Dr Ian Morrison, the president of the BMA, described his plan by saying, yet again, the rhetoric on this is failing to match a reality. Now, we agree we need to end the ATM rush for a GP appointment. But what is John Swinney's plan? One extra appointment for every GP every fortnight. That's hardly going to end the ATM rush for GP appointments, is it?
First Minister.
Well, that's only one part of the plan that we're taking forward, and I'll come on to that in a second. But before I get to that, let's just look at the issue about temporary accommodation. There's 20 local authority areas, because of the financial support being put in place by the Scottish Government, have reduced the number of children in temporary accommodation. 12 local authorities have reduced the number of households in temporary accommodation in 2023-24. Why is that happening? It's happening because the Government has put financial support in place to make sure that void accommodation can be brought back into use so that families can be accommodated. That's a change in government policy, a change that took place under my leadership. Now, yes, right now, it's all happening right now as we speak, with local authority temporary accommodation levels coming down because of investment in this government, investment that the Labour Party refused to support in the budget. So they shouldn't come here complaining about housing when they wouldn't be prepared to just press a button to vote in favour of £768 million. No wonder I complain about the Labour Party whinging about things. Now, on the issue of GP appointments...
Let's hear one another.
On the issue of GP appointments...
Let's hear one another.
On the issue of GP appointments, there are a number of measures the Government are taking. Yes, we're delivering 100,000 additional appointments for GPs. We're also expanding the Pharmacy First services to reduce pressure and demand on GP services, and we're expanding the availability of allied health practitioners within frontline health services. These measures will deal with the issues that are raised about the ATM rush by reducing pressure on GP services. That's the plan the Government is taking forward. That's what the Government is going to implement.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, John Swinney just exposed himself all over again on Tuesday, saying shameful, find something else to moan about homelessness, standing up and apologising for the bad language because that's not how he operates, and now complaining about whinging about homelessness. Shelter Scotland called it a programme for homelessness, and he should wake up and listen to what they have to say. Now, the deadly situation in our NHS caused by the SNP is so vast, but whole areas were omitted from his programme for government. And take just one, our ambulance service. Today, Scottish Labour can reveal shocking new figures that show ambulances are being left queuing up outside hospitals for hours on end, turning car parks into makeshift A&E wards across Scotland. Sick patients getting life-saving treatment in parking bays outside the hospital. At Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, one ambulance was stuck outside for over 15 hours. In Ayr, another waited nearly 15 hours. In Elgin, 12 hours. Car parks turned into A&E wards, corridor care now under malady, 800,000 stuck on waiting lists, and record number of Scots forced to go private. Isn't it the case that the party that created Scotland's NHS crisis can't be the one to fix it?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, on performance in our hospitals, we obviously face significant challenges remaining in the National Health Service, and I've acknowledged those in all my answers to First Minister's questions. What we find, for example, is on the 4-hour A&E targets that there has been an improvement in performance in the latest data and a strengthening over recent weeks. When we then look at the delivery of pledges on waiting times within our National Health Service, as I indicated in my earlier answer to Mr Finlay, we pledged to carry out 64,000 additional appointments by the end of March 2025, and we didn't do that. We delivered 105,500. And in addition to that, we've put in place investment, again, which the Labour Party couldn't bring itself to support in the budget. And the point I'm making to Parliament is the Labour Party comes here and complains about issues but won't actually do the heavy lifting of supporting the budget to make the investment possible. Can I just point out to the Labour Party, they voted against record investment in the National Health Service of £21 billion, and they then come here to complain to me about different issues. That's the hypocrisy I'm highlighting from the Labour Party today. We've set out that our investment in the NHS will be focused on addressing the priorities of the people. That will be about reducing waiting times, improving access to GP services, and the Government will deliver on those commitments.
Question number 3, Patrick Harvie.
I first raised the need for rent controls well over a decade ago, to the complete disinterest of the SNP Housing Minister of the day. By then, private rented housing had already been growing dramatically for years, but rents had continued to spiral. And the situation now is far more severe. Even if rent controls had just been in place for the last 5 years, people renting their homes in places like Glasgow and Edinburgh would be thousands of pounds a year better off. Now, I'm glad that Green efforts and the work of tenants' unions have resulted in a housing bill with rent controls for Scotland, even if it is weaker because of SNP amendments. And I'm glad that our plans for energy efficiency rules for private landlords are finally going to happen as well. But can the First Minister explain why it took so many years of pressure from the Greens to make the SNP accept that rents are too high, standards are too low, and that urgent action is needed?
First Minister.
Well, there are, of course, a whole range of different provisions in statute to protect tenants in the existing arrangements. Indeed, there's protections around evictions. There have been protections around winter evictions, and there is support in place through discretionary housing payments to assist tenants as well. So there's been a whole range of different measures put in place by the Scottish Government over the years to protect tenants. And I welcome the fact that we are in agreement with Mr Harvie on the question of the housing legislation that's in front of Parliament just now. That's been passed at stage 1 by Parliament. Stage 2 is being considered by the Scottish Parliament, and we will introduce a system of rent controls, and I look forward to further parliamentary scrutiny on that issue.
Patrick Harvie.
The frustration comes with the delay, and I know that frustration is felt by SNP party members who voted for rent control policy for many years as well, without action happening. There was never any need for these many years of delay, and we could have done far more good for people by acting sooner. This housing bill must make rent more affordable, and it will need to be strengthened if it's going to do that. But it also must provide more protection for people who rent their homes. People deserve the right to withhold rent payments when issues like mould, damp and serious repairs are being left by landlords for months, sometimes for years on end. Will the First Minister back the Green proposal to give people the right to withhold rent payment until repairs are completed, to stop landlords profiting while they ignore their responsibilities? Or is this another issue that will take 10 years of pressure before the Government acts?
First Minister.
Well, obviously, as I said in my earlier answer, the bill is going through stage 2 consideration, and if there are amendments coming forward, ministers will consider the issues that arise out of that process, and ultimately the bill will come back to Parliament for stage 3 consideration. So I acknowledge the issue that Mr Harvie raises with me. Obviously, the purpose of the rent control legislation is to make sure that tenants have more say, they have more control, that landlords fulfil their obligations, and those considerations will lie at the heart of the legislation.
Question number 4, Kevin Stewart.
To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's response is to water scarcity alerts issued by SEPA for the east of Scotland in light of low rainfall and warm temperatures.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, SEPA's latest report highlighted that 17 out of 47 areas in Scotland are in alert status for water scarcity, and most of the rest of the country are in early warning status. An update on that position will be published by the regulator SEPA later on this afternoon. SEPA have contacted those who abstract water, including businesses and farmers in affected areas, and has provided them with advice. Public drinking water supply in those areas is not affected. We are working closely with SEPA, Scottish Water and others to ensure that water supply is monitored and supported in line with Scotland's National Water Scarcity Plan. Climate change is driving more extreme conditions, and we all need to adapt to that reality. I urge businesses, organisations and individuals to do their part to plan ahead and use water wisely.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the First Minister for that answer. It's worrying that many rivers, including the Dee and Don, which bound my constituency, have so low water levels at this time of year. And in spite of nature's clear warnings, we're currently witnessing climate change denial and an even stronger pushback against net zero and a just transition from the likes of Farage and even Tony Blair. Does the First Minister share my concerns that the rise of this regressive anti-net zero agenda puts all of the vital work that is going on to grow our green economy and to create jobs for the future at great risk?
First Minister.
I do share those concerns. The position that we find ourselves in at the present moment, with a water scarcity map in early May, which is really quite difficult to consume because of the acute challenges that are being faced at this time of the year, where we would ordinarily never face these issues about water scarcity, I think is an illustration of climate change. That requires us to take the necessary action that Mr Stewart has suggested in relation to climate action, and that's why it's so central to the Government's programme.
Question number 5, Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister, in light of the publication of the programme for government, what action the Scottish Government is taking to ensure that prevention is more strongly integrated into the health system.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, as I set out in January and reinforced in our programme for government, a long-term shift to prevention is central to sustaining and renewing our NHS. Scotland has led the way in public health action over many years, with bold measures such as the indoor smoking ban and minimum unit pricing for alcohol. We are building on this action by publishing a new population health framework in the coming weeks.
Brian Whittle.
Can I thank the First Minister for that answer? But the Scottish Fiscal Commission's latest Fiscal Sustainability Report highlights the major effect that the rising prevalence of long-term preventable illnesses among Scots has on health spending, and how, if that rise continues as it is, it will have a sizable impact on Scotland's finances. Presiding Officer, in this chamber we always seem to talk in statistics to try and highlight how good we are or are not. However, as I've highlighted for the decade I've been in here, the only statistic that matters when we're talking about health is the fact that Scotland continues to be the unhealthiest nation in Europe, with many indicators continuing to worsen at an alarming rate. So, does the First Minister agree with me that this report must be the final wake-up call for action, that we must take greater steps to prevent illness through early intervention, particularly through encouraging healthier lifestyles, supporting the third sector, improving access to sport and physical activity, because if the Scottish Government continue on the current trajectory, the health service will fast become unsustainable?
First Minister.
So I generally agree with the points that Mr Whittle has made about the importance of preventative interventions, and that is exactly what the Government is pursuing. As he knows, I commissioned the Christie Commission report in 2010, which gave us valuable insight on the approach to prevention, and that is being applied by the Government and has been applied by the Government around programmes such as the promotion of healthy eating, the work to tackle obesity, work to reduce harms from smoking and vaping, the work that we undertake on investment in sport and active living, the increases in vaccination uptake and the benefits of social prescribing, all of which have formed part of the Government's programme. And I assure Mr Whittle that that focus on prevention will remain central to the Government's programme.
Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister talks about prevention, but Edinburgh Integration Joint Board is being forced to make cuts to preventative care and third sector organisations, including the Stafford Centre, which supports 640 people with mental health issues and is estimated to save the NHS up to £4.4 million in hospital admission. Given the situation in joint boards across Scotland, does the First Minister recognise that prevention will not be possible if IGBs are in permanent financial crisis?
First Minister.
Obviously, I want to make sure that the type of services that Mr Chowdhury has raised with me are supported around the country. These are operational decisions for integrated joint boards to take. I would point out that, of course, they can only make the decisions based on the financial allocations made by this Parliament, and Mr Chowdhury was unable to support the allocations of funding that the Government has made to this issue. So we certainly will work with the integrated joint boards, but Mr Chowdhury cannot be absolved of his responsibility for failing to support the budget, which is delivering the investment that's necessary in health and social care. And the Labour Party can moan all they want at me about the public finances.
Let's hear one another.
They've not been prepared to put the money in to support people in the communities of Scotland.
Jeremy Balfour.
First Minister, following on from the previous question, I have been contacted by numerous charities in my region which are going to have to cease providing vital prevention care for individuals in Midlothians due to the IJB cuts. The First Minister said that he wants to lay aside politics and do the best for the people of Scotland. Will he now intervene in this crisis to make sure that the NHS Lothian do not cut their budget to the IJB, which means that these vulnerable people will be put out of the services that they require? And rather than talking about previous things, will he now be proactive in working with NHS Lothian, the Council, to make sure IJB get the appropriate funding?
First Minister.
Well, the Government obviously engages with health boards around the country, and local authorities have their own decision-making to make as part of the IGB structures, and we will engage constructively in any way we can to help on these issues. But Mr Balfour is another one who comes here and asks me to invest in local services when his party leader wants me to cut public expenditure by £1 billion. How's that going to help an IGB around the country? So I'm not going to tire in pointing out the total and utter hypocrisy of people who come here asking for tax cuts and want me to spend more money. It's hypocrisy on stilts.
Question number 6, Jackie Bailey. To ask the First Minister when the landslip shelter on the A83 at the Reston Be Thankful will be complete.
First Minister.
The Government is committed to delivering an infrastructure solution to address the landslip risk at the Reston Be Thankful as soon as possible. Delivery of a permanent solution is a priority. In December, we published draft orders for both the long-term solution and future stages of the medium-term improvements. Construction can only commence if approved under the relevant statutory authorisation process, and therefore a timetable for construction can only be determined at that time.
Jackie Bailey.
The First Minister will be aware of the huge impact that the closure of the A83 at the Reston Be Thankful has on the economy and the people of Argyll. But this hasn't happened just yesterday. It's been a problem for more than 15 years. And all that local people want is a road that stays open when it rains. Instead, local campaigners have little confidence that the SNP will deliver a solution, given the government's track record on road building. And they are not whingers, First Minister. They fear that it could be another decade and £500 million later before the road is actually usable. Will the First Minister commit today to accelerating that much-needed work to ensure the people of Argyll are not disadvantaged by continuing closure of the A83?
First Minister.
The significance of this point for access to Argyll and Bute, and it's a point regularly made to me by Jenny Minto, the local member for Argyll. What we've done is we've taken steps to ensure that we strengthen the alternative route through the old military road, and so that it can be operational to provide that connectivity and to avoid the lengthy diversion that is required should all of that access be unavailable. The steps that have been taken to ensure that the the landslip shelter are put in place, are underway, as I've told Jackie Bailey. The preparatory work is being undertaken, and the Government will be happy to share details with Parliament and with local stakeholders. I'm pretty sure the Transport Secretary has met already with the Rest and Be Thankful interested parties to discuss this issue about the progress that can be made.
Thank you. We move to constituency and general supplementaries, and I call Jackie Dunbar.
Presiding Officer, First Minister, Harbour Energy, the largest independent oil and gas firm in the North Sea and based in my Aberdeen Donside constituency, has announced it will cut around 250 onshore jobs in Scotland, and they have put the blame squarely at the foot of the policies of the Labour UK Government. Successive UK governments have ignored warnings about job losses, treated Aberdeen as a cash cow and is undermining efforts to deliver a just transition. Can the First Minister advise what assessment the Scottish Government has made of this ongoing situation? Will he join me in writing to the UK Government, urging them to take the action required to support jobs in Scotland's energy sector?
Let's hear Ms Dunbar.
And will he comment on the importance of a just transition for energy workers? And I don't find it funny.
First Minister.
President, I agree with Jackie Dunbar that a just transition for Scotland's valued and highly skilled offshore energy workers is absolutely essential. I'm deeply concerned to hear the news from Harbour Energy about their plans in Aberdeen. My thoughts are first and foremost with the workforce who will be facing an extraordinarily anxious time. The Deputy First Minister is speaking with Harbour Energy on this matter today. The fiscal and regulatory regimes for offshore oil and gas are reserved to the UK Government. The Scottish Government has made clear our concern about the extension and the scale of the Energy Profits Levy, and I urge the United Kingdom Government to engage with the industry to address the fiscal realities and implications of the UK Government's position.
Thank you. Douglas Lumsden.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The 250 jobs going at Harbour Energy is going to be a devastating blow for those families. And Presiding Officer, I think enough is enough. We have a Labour government in Westminster determined to destroy the North East and the oil and gas industry. But we also have an SNP government asleep at the wheel with no energy strategy, a presumption against new oil and gas, and who are selling out communities all over the North East. So will the First Minister apologise to the 250 workers who are set to lose their livelihoods as his government turns its back on the North East of Scotland?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, my concern first and foremost is about the well-being of the workforce in Harbour Energy, and I don't think the way in which Mr Lumsden characterises this issue is in any way remotely helpful to addressing the concerns of that workforce. Might I point out to Mr Lumsden and to the Conservative Party that the Energy Profits Levy was a product of the last Conservative government, which
let's hear the First Minister.
It doesn't matter how much I get barracked in this Parliament, I will point out the hard realities and implications of the Conservative Party's decisions in the United Kingdom Government. Now, one of the things which I think would help enormously in this whole area of policy is for the current United Kingdom Government to do something that the last Conservative Government didn't do, and that's to commit urgently, swiftly, to the Acorn carbon capture and storage project, because that would help us enormously. Now, the Conservatives never lifted a finger to make that happen. Not one finger. I hope the Labour Party will not do the same.
Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In February this year, the First Minister told the Chamber that the overall attainment gap had reduced by 60%. But today, the UK Stats Authority has confirmed that the figure used isn't even part of his government's own framework for measuring the attainment gap. In their letter, they say that, to maintain trust and confidence in their statements, ministers should take care that when they claim progress of their policies, it is by their own defined measures. This intervention demolishes the government's claim on the attainment gap and exposes the truth. A generation of children have been let down by a government more interested in spinning numbers than solving problems. So can I ask the First Minister, will he now admit that he and his government have failed to close the attainment gap?
First Minister.
Well, I acknowledge the contents of the letter from the Statistics Authority. I've used one particular measure of the attainment gap. I could use others. The poverty-related attainment gap between young people from the most and least deprived areas meeting standards in literacy is at a record low in primary schools. The attainment gap has reached record lows between secondary pupils achieving third level in both literacy and numeracy. So those are some of the points. Now, I accept that there remains an attainment gap within Scottish education. I was out this morning at Brunston Primary School in the east of Edinburgh and saw at first hand the effect of the Scottish Attainment Challenge, which has supported the development of leadership in the school, which has enhanced the curriculum, which has led to greater engagement with families and a rise in attendance of young people at a school as a consequence of the investment we are able to make available as a government. So nothing is going to detract me from focusing on improving the life chances of children, whether that's children living in poverty, and making sure that we tackle the issues around household income and about engagement with schools, and that will lie at the heart of our steps in the attainment agenda.
Karen Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In light of this being Deaf Awareness Week, can I ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government is doing to support deaf people in Scotland?
First Minister.
I welcome the contribution that Karen Adam makes on these issues. It is important to highlight the importance of Deafness Awareness Week to increase understanding of deaf culture and language. The Deputy First Minister met with members of the community last week. The BSL National Plan 2023-29 represents our ongoing commitment to making Scotland the best place in the world for BSL users to live, work, visit and learn.
Miles Briggs.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As we've heard already this afternoon, the proposals by Edinburgh IJB are likely to now see key services cut. These include drop-in support, carer services, and as we mark VE Day, even veterans support services. The First Minister has proportioned blame for a budget which is not acceptable. It will cut £29 million from services here in Edinburgh. So can I ask him again, does he actually think that our health services will improve by the decisions being taken by the IJB, and will he agree to meet with a cross-party group of MSPs who are trying to raise this issue in Parliament and just have had the First Minister whack this back at us? We need action, and we want the First Minister to take heed of that today. First Minister.
President Officer, I'm just simply being straight with Parliament about the realities that we've got to face. That's what I'm doing. Miles Briggs is, I understand the issues he's raising with me. I'm totally familiar with them. I understand the importance of them. I've just answered Mr Whittle about the importance of there being a focus on preventative interventions, and many of the interventions that Mr Briggs is talking about are preventative interventions. But the point I'm making to Parliament is that the investment in these services doesn't happen by accident. It happens by political choice. And Mr Briggs was one of those who voted against the government's budget, and he also argued in favour, as his leader did, for £1 billion worth of cuts in public expenditure. How does Mr Briggs think that it's possible to invest in local services with £1 billion of swinging cuts from the Conservatives?
Jamie Green.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Today, the Scottish Government announced the direct award of the West Coast Ferry contract to CalMac, citing that there are no legal barriers to doing so. Yet oddly used the opposite argument as to why they couldn't award a contract to Ferguson Marine in Port Glasgow. But the real question on the minds of islanders is, will the removal of the tender process actually deliver better and more reliable lifeline ferry services? Just days ago, CalMac made a unilateral decision to reduce frequency of sailings to the Isle of Cumbrae. Now, that has been met by absolute fury on the island, described as absurd, reckless and ridiculous by local businesses, and I will forward that correspondence to the First Minister this afternoon. What comfort will the First Minister offer our island communities that they will be properly consulted before key decisions are made? And what comfort will they have that this decision to direct award this contract will actually improve their ferry services?
First Minister.
That's at the very heart of the Direct Award, is the objective of doing exactly that. One of the key obligations within the contract is the necessity to engage with communities, and there is a more significant role in the Direct Award to the Ferry Services Board, the Community Ferry Services Board, which of course is able to articulate on many of the issues that Mr Green has put to me. So that the contract is structured to make sure community voice and community aspiration is right at the heart of the delivery of ferry services, and that would be a contractual obligation of CalMac.
Bill Kidd.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. The recent escalation of threats between India and Pakistan is deeply concerning for all of us across Scotland, but particularly for those such as my Glasgow Anniesland constituents of both Indian and Pakistani heritage. Many people will be anxiously watching the situation develop. Can the First Minister join me in urging for de-escalation in the region, and does he agree that peace and stability across the world is the best achieved by dialogue and diplomacy and not by violence?
First Minister.
The terrorist attack in Pahalgam and the escalating tensions between India and Pakistan are highly concerning. I share Mr Kidd's aspiration that all leaders should choose dialogue, diplomacy and shared humanity ahead of force and bloodshed. There can be no winners from further military escalation. The world has enough conflict on its hands at this present moment. So I do urge that dialogue to resolve these issues. Scotland's Indian and Pakistani communities enrich Scotland's society socially, culturally and economically. I am very mindful of the importance of encouraging and sustaining community cohesion in what will be a worrying time, and I will do everything I can to try to draw communities together at this anxious time in Scotland.
Pam Gossel.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In the past couple of months, I have been contacted by many survivors of domestic abuse from my West of Scotland region and across the country. Many of these brave women told me that their abusers were repeat offenders and that their ordeal could have been prevented. My Prevention of Domestic Abuse Scotland bill was published this morning, and, if passed, would create a domestic abuse register similar to the Sex Offenders Register, acting as a deterrent and giving further protection to potential victims. Therefore, I would like to ask the First Minister if the Scottish Government will be backing my bill, which has received the support of the third sector organisations as well as many survivors of domestic abuse.
First Minister.
I understand that ministers have met with Pam Gossel a number of times to discuss her bill. I acknowledge the fact that it's been published this morning. As always with members' bills, the Government will engage on this question, and we are always willing to explore any options to reduce crime and reoffending, and particularly as it affects domestic abuse within our society. So ministers will be happy to engage on that question.
Blair Hawhey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My constituents in Rutherglen will welcome the recent announcement that peak rail fares are to be abolished on publicly owned ScotRail. Can I ask the First Minister how much is anticipated that the average commuter in Scotland will save over the course of a year's travel, thanks to this intervention by the SNP, the only party that people in Scotland can rely on to protect their interests and deliver for them?
First Minister.
Well, the Government is absolutely committed to supporting individuals who face challenges in the cost of living crisis that we are experiencing. The steps that the Government announced on Tuesday will support commuters and, for example, an individual who commutes each working day between Edinburgh and Glasgow could expect to save almost £4,000 over the course of the year from September, which is a formidable saving to assist individuals in their lives. It's just another example of the cost of living guarantee that people are assured by a government that's prepared to put a budget to Parliament to support it and to make sure we help hard-pressed householders the length and breadth of Scotland.
Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. John Swinney recently awarded all of his highly paid ministers a £20,000 increase in their salary. And despite saying he would not benefit from this, a Freedom of Information response I've received suggests that John Swinney did receive the increased salary in his most recent pay packet. So, given John Swinney said earlier he wants to be straight with Parliament, can he tell us if that is correct? His most recent pay packet included that uplift. Will he pay that money back? And does he accept the anger amongst people across Scotland that sees highly paid ministers get a salary increase while budgets are cut?
Yeah. First Minister.
President Officer, what I decided to do about ministerial pay was to apply the approach that pertained when Mr Ross was a minister in the United Kingdom government, which is
Mr Ross.
Which is that ministers are entitled to take their full pay as members of the Scottish Parliament, but that their ministerial pay remains frozen at 2008-09 levels, which I don't think actually was the position when Mr Ross was a minister. So ministers in the Scottish Government are getting the same pay as MSPs as everybody else, apart from one.
First Minister, Mr Ross, if I hear you once more, you will leave this chamber. First Minister.
So, just to be clear, because I think it's important that members of the public hear the facts about this, ministers are going to get their full MSP salary in the way that every other member of the Scottish Parliament gets their full salary, apart from one person, and that's me, because I have decided voluntarily to maintain the freeze on my MSP pay as well as my First Minister salary. Now, to the best of my knowledge, I have not had an increase in my salary as a consequence in terms of the cash payment that's been made. I will go and check it, and I'll make it clear this afternoon. I'm very happy to do that. I've got no worries about sharing that information, because what I've said to the public and to Parliament is that I will not take an increase in my MSP salary, and I will not take an increase in my ministerial pay. It will be frozen at 2008-09 levels. Now, if there's, I don't think from my recollection that any different pay has been put into my bank account. I'll go and check it. I'll go and check it, but I don't think there is. But I would have thought it says something about where the Conservative Party has reached. That they haven't.
Let's hear the First Minister.
I think it says something about the depths that the Conservative Party has now reached, that they are not prepared to take anything in good faith across this parliamentary chamber. The Conservative Party never ceased to amaze me about how low they will stoop. They are a disgusting organisation.
That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a member's business debate in the name of Michael Mara, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the gallery and the chamber to do so.
Okay, if I could encourage members leaving the public gallery to do so as quickly and as quietly as possible, as we move on to the next item of business, which is a members' business debate on motion 16503 in the name of Michael Mara on wraparound care for children with additional support needs. The debate will be concluded without any questions being put. I invite members wishing to participate to press the request to speak buttons, and I invite Michael Mara to open the debate around 7 minutes. Mr Mara.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I begin by thanking all members from across the chamber who have supported this motion to enable the debate to take place. With just under 2 months until the long annual holidays, many Scottish families will have already planned holidays here or abroad, booked leave from work, sorted childcare with relatives. They're signing up for football camps or outdoor activities, and hopefully a long sunny summer starting today. But there's far too little of that is available to families of children with additional needs. For thousands of families, summer arrangements are as yet unknown and unknowable, and they are staring down yet another chaotic summer period without adequate childcare. I hesitate to call it a holiday because for these families that is not a description that they would recognise. It is far too often a time of increased anxiety and challenge where routine disappears, where hours at work are missed, and the build-up to this can take months. The knowledge of this vast chasm looms large for many families, and the stress that it imposes is acute. For many families, it actually defines what type of employment they can take or whether they can even work at all. In September of 2024, I hosted a roundtable in Dundee to hear the stories of families who face these challenges year in and year out. Parents and carers attended, along with organisations including Dundee United Community Trust, The Yard and Happy Times Out of School Care Club. And they were clear that needs are not being met, very far from it. But local authorities do have a statutory duty under the Children's Scotland Act 1995 to provide out-of-school and holiday care to children classified as in need. And that includes children with disabilities. Yet the usual childcare options, such as holiday clubs, are often not available or appropriate for children with additional needs and disabilities. Even when there are appropriate childcare options, information can be very hard to find, or those services can be cancelled at the last minute, leaving working parents in the lurch and families in crisis. So I welcome the announcement from the Scottish Government ahead of this debate that they will provide £1 million to local authorities for holiday play schemes and activities for disabled children. I would be grateful if the Minister in her remarks could confirm whether that is £1 million per authority or £1 million divided by 32. With the holidays fast approaching, families need details now on what specific services will be available and where. So will this money be available this summer? I hope the Minister will be able to set out some tangible actions her government and local government can take together to ensure this summer can be different. My constituent Nicola Donnelly is joining us in the public gallery today. Nicola's son Leo is 7 years old. Leo has cerebral palsy, resulting in developmental delays and visual impairment. Nicola has fought tirelessly for Leo and other kids like him to get the care and support they deserve. So Nicola told me this: since Leo was born, he has fought for survival, had major operations and overcome medical and developmental hurdles with great spirit. To fail at finding something that should be so commonplace like a holiday club felt very painful, and a stark reminder of how inaccessible society remains for disabled children and how isolating life can be as a parent-carer. These kids and their families aren't asking for special treatment. They're asking for what the law entitles them to. In a recent survey by the organisation Pregnant Then Screwed, 71% of parents who responded said they had difficulties in accessing wraparound care for their children. Of those parents, 75% had reduced their hours at work or left work altogether. This takes a real toll on family finances, the health and well-being of parents and, frankly, our wider economy. My constituent Louise's son, Josh, has an ADHD diagnosis. He struggles in social settings and his school attendance has been falling. As a single parent, Louise has had to give up her job, working in a primary school with other children with additional support needs, so that she can be at home for her son. She has praised the amazing work of the yard, in her words. And I know many other constituents have been helped by the work of that excellent organisation. I recently visited their Easter holiday club in Dundee and met the children and parents enjoying play together there. But Louise has also told me that without a Section 23 referral from social work, despite the obvious difficulties our son is experiencing, he cannot access many of the services provided by the local authority. It would be good if, in closing, the Minister could address that particular issue. Louise said, "I know how it feels to be a parent of a child with ASN, and it's hard and draining. You give up your own life to fight for them, and you constantly hit a brick wall because there is nothing." The First Minister told Parliament last Thursday at FMQs that you do not require a diagnosis of neurodivergence to access services and support. That is simply untrue. I very much believe that this government's moves to ship children awaiting an ADHD or autism diagnosis off the CAMHS waiting list will exacerbate the many challenges experienced by families with neurodivergent children. So what do families need? Let them plan. They require timely information with a programme of options published well in advance of holiday periods. That should be standard practice in local authorities across Scotland, including referrals, costs, transport options and whether a Section 23 referral will be required. They need the details. Give them the details. Staff ratios. Is it accessible? Are there appropriate facilities available? Parents and carers need the confidence that the service meets their child's needs. And make it easy. A clear process for direct payments to be provided and, where appropriate, personal assistance engaged through self-directed support. So I want to thank organisations like Contact, the Coalition of Carers in Scotland, PAMIS, Dundee Carer Centre and Pregnant Then Screwed for the work they are doing to support families in these situations and for all their work with me to raise awareness ahead of this debate. I know that colleagues will be raising other organisations that work in their own areas and do great work with these children. But they can only do so much. At the heart of this issue is a Scottish Government that is telling families that they are entitled to services, but families discovering those services are simply nowhere to be found. So I look forward to hearing other members' accounts of families in their own regions and constituencies. We can and must do better for Leo, for Josh, for thousands like them across Scotland. And frankly, it should happen this summer. Let's actually solve the problem.
Thank you. We now move to the open debate. I would gentle reminder to those in the public gallery, this is a meeting in public rather than a public meeting, so you are discouraged from participating. The open debate, I call first Stuart McMillan, to be followed by Paul Kane. Around 4 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Presiding Officer. First, I want to commend Michael Mara for securing this important debate. And during my near 2 decades tenure as an MSP, I've received lots of correspondence about the challenges facing families with children with additional support needs. And certainly much of what Michael Mara has said is something that I've heard particularly a great deal of over the last 12 months. Now, one of the more pertinent issues is the lack of wraparound care. Now, wraparound care can be critical for lots of families as it can support parents into work, but for parents with children with ASN, the need is very much even greater. I considered the briefing provided by Pregnant Then Screwed Scotland, which states that, and I quote, "Despite the statutory duty for local authorities to provide out-of-hours care for children with ASN, a staggering 71% of survey parents reported serious difficulties in accessing this support." Now, Presiding Officer, I recently surveyed parents in my Greenock and Inverclyde constituency on this very issue, and my findings reflect Pregnant Then Screwed Scotland's research. When I say recently, I announced one aspect of the survey yesterday, and I'm going to do 3 now because I'm also writing to Inverclyde Council and councillors on the Education Committee, as well as obviously come back to the parents with all the findings from the survey. But key headline results from the survey, which generated 119 responses, are as follows. 94% say the current out-of-school care options for children with ASN in Inverclyde do not suit their child needs. 67% don't receive out-of-school care for holiday provision for their ASN child, and 69% are either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with the current care arrangements for ASN children in Inverclyde. Now, when 2/3 of respondents indicate that they have got no access to wraparound support, it's unsurprising that the majority are unhappy with the current provision. Now, this is detrimental detrimental for both children with ASN, but also the wider family unit, as the impact upon other siblings and parents is also profound. Now, the implications of a lack of wraparound support are significant, not only for the children's wellbeing and development, but also for the economic security and the mental health of their parents. Now, going back to the Pregnant and Screwed Scotland's briefing, the impact on employment is particularly severe, which Michael Mara touched upon. Among those who couldn't access sufficient childcare, 29% were forced to leave their jobs, 46% reduced their working hours, 37% relied on informal care, often from ageing grandparents, and 39% were only able to continue working due to flexible arrangements. Presiding Officer, these are not just statistics. They represent real lives under immense pressure. Now, I know from speaking with local parents that the summer holidays come with a huge sense of dread. And for many people, summer is a chance to enjoy more quality time with friends and family. Going out on holiday or going away for the day can be special. However, for families with children with ASN, even one day out can require a huge amount of planning, and even more so if a child requires a changing places toilet. Now, this... Sure?
Michael Mara.
Can I commend Stuart McMillan both on the survey and an excellent speech that echoes many of the findings that I've had in my own constituency. One of the things I think he's touching on is the issue about planning ahead and the challenges within that, and the real need for local authorities to plan ahead and offer those options well in advance so that families... Is that a similar experience that his constituents in Inverclyde are finding, that they don't have that information in advance?
Stuart McMillan.
Yes, very much is. I know certainly from the work that the local parents have undertaken and the pressure they have put upon Inverclyde Council, there is now more of a sense of engagement, quite honestly, which I welcome. And also the issue regarding, particularly for the summer, the email was sent round to all the parents within all the schools, asking if there's any parents who, and if they know of people who actually would want to participate in taking part in some of these activities over the summer to actually help the children with ASN. So I think there is the pressure has been working, but fundamentally this is about actually children. It's about children actually having the similar opportunities that every other child can actually have within our communities. Now, Presiding Officer, in closing, wraparound care for families with children with ASN is a hugely important issue which needs to be given a lot more focus. Now, I think we are moving certainly in the right direction now, but my goodness, there is still a long, long way to go. And if there are any positive examples from across the country, then I would genuinely encourage local authorities to engage wider, so they can actually learn about anything else that's actually on offer, because fundamentally it's about the kids. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I call Paul O'Kane to be followed by Jeremy Balfour. In 4 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer, and I'm very pleased to be able to contribute to this debate this afternoon. And I'd like to thank my friend Michael Mara for securing debating time on this important topic, and for the way that he opened debate in outlining many of the issues that many members around the Chamber will recognise from their own constituencies and regions, because it's important that we take this time in Parliament to discuss these issues, I think, and to hold the Government and local authorities to account in terms of what has been a lack of action to deal with this issue and to move it forward. And at the outset of my remarks, I declare an interest as a former employee of Enable Scotland and a former education convener in a local authority, and it's very much in those guises that I approach the debate, as well as a member for West Scotland who has had representation from many parents and children and young people who have a learning disability or an additional support need, who are really, really struggling right now. And I'm reflecting on Mr McMillan's comments, which I thought was a very good speech, and his own survey work that he's done. And I'm reminded that back in 2016, Enable Scotland produced an important report called Included in the Main, that looked at inclusion across education and childcare and laid out 22 recommendations for the government to take forward at that time to think about how young people with additional support needs are better included within the school day, but also in terms of all of the supports that are required in terms of childcare, wraparound childcare, and more widely being included in things like sporting activities, drama, and all the things that we would want to see all of our young people be able to access. And there was clear recommendations in there about how we need to support mainstream provision better to make sure that it can be more inclusive, but also that we have that specialist provision as well. I have to say that since that 2016 report, I think we have actually moved backwards in many of these areas and on many of the issues that have been outlined, and that is a matter of great regret, and it's something that the government needs to take very seriously. I think also in terms of that report, what was clear in the work that was done by Enable Scotland is that parents, when they were asked about their experience of many of these issues, they used words like battle to describe the daily experience they have of getting provision for their child or for the young person. And they talked about that anxiety and that dread that we've already heard from colleagues about those summer holiday or other holiday periods and being able to access the support that they need. So it is of concern to me that we haven't addressed many of those recommendations that were within that report. And I said that I also approached this as someone who was the convener of education in East Renfrewshire. And in East Renfrewshire, we were very fortunate to have an excellent provision at the Isabel Mayor School in Newton Mearns, and I want to pay tribute to the Isabel Mayor School and all the excellent work that goes on there. And I'm sure everybody would recognise the excellent provision that is available in many communities. But the reality is that funding decisions over many years, because of significant cuts to council budgets, have meant that many of these opportunities for childcare and support have been reduced. And in my time in the council, we had to take decisions to reduce, for example, the extended school day or the summer holiday programme, and that is not something that anyone wants to have to do, but it's a position we were forced into by the inadequate funding from the government. So the government needs to take cognizance of that and of their decisions, and I hope the Minister, I think, is saying something from a sedentary position, but I hope she will address that in her summing up, because it is an important point. Presiding Officer, I think what is clear here is that there is a will across the chamber to make sure that we get this right, to make sure that we do provide adequate support for not only the children and young people to have a rich experience, but to support their parents who are experiencing stress and anxiety and are having to, as we've heard already, make choices about their life and about their working life in particular that are detrimental to our wider economy here in Scotland. So in bringing my remarks to a conclusion, I think it is important that the Government offers its response today and that we as a Parliament take this seriously, do not forget it and continue to work to make sure the solutions are in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr O'Kane. I now call Jeremy Balfour to be followed by Sarah Boyack. Around 4 minutes. Mr Balfour.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I also thank the member for bringing this debate forward this afternoon, and can I also fully agree with the comments by the two previous speakers as well. I'm sure that the Chamber will be tired of hearing me say this, but I think it does bear repeating, and it often takes us to break through that disabled people are being left behind in Scotland today. I agree that I think we have gone backwards in Scotland in the last number of years. Pre-pandemic, the situation was already bad, but since then the decline has been escalating and getting worse. There's a worrying trend emerging as the country struggles to deal with our current economic predicament. It seems that if sacrifices have to be made, then government and local authorities are going to the most vulnerable in our society, and that is often disabled individuals. Third sector budgets are being cut, and numerous charities are going to the wall. This is leaving the vital services that provide vulnerable people with the support undone, and the need is getting worse. Nowhere is this more evident in the gutting of after-school and holiday care for children with additional support needs. For parents of ASN children, after-school and holiday care is not a luxury. It's absolutely essential to allow them to take part in society and, in many cases, hold a job to support their family. I've had a number of constituents write to me over the last couple of weeks coming up to this debate. And they are being put in an impossible situation because of a lack of adequate support. Let me give one example. One individual who's written to me is a single parent with 2 children, the eldest having both autism and ADHD. She is classed as her child's carer, but is also pursuing a degree at university. During the most recent school holiday, she managed to secure 4 days a week for her son at an ASN holiday club, which she describes as a godsend. However, thanks to a decision by Edinburgh City Council, she now only has 2 weeks for the summer holidays. That leaves her 5 weeks without any support at all. No support for 5 weeks. How do we expect this mother to cope on her own? Moreover, Presiding Officer, she has told me that ASN children are effectively banned from mainstream holiday clubs because charities running them cannot afford to pay the staff required for one-to-one care. Now, I'm sure the Chamber is aware that ASN is becoming more prevalent. The number of people here in Edinburgh has gone to around 50% of children in education. Without the support, this represents a huge number of parents who are unable to work because of caring duties. We should not forget that most of the care responsibilities fall on women. Presiding Officer, this is obviously not good enough. Apart from the morality of ensuring that everyone has access to meaningful work to support their family, it also has economic implications for us in Scotland. The Social Security and Social Justice Committee produced a report recently on trying to get women back into employment. I think, in fact, it started when the Minister was on the committee. And one of the key factors was allowing support to women to be able to go back to work. And yet, for my constituents, we're being told that in the summer, there is no support for them. To close, I'm tired of saying it, and I'm sure you're tired of hearing it, but disabled people have been left behind, and so are their families. ESN children and their parents deserve our support, and we deserve much better than they're getting now. Can I urge Scottish Government and local authorities to deal with this situation? Presiding Officer, we have 7 weeks to the summer holidays. 7 weeks for something to be done to help the most vulnerable in our society. What people don't want today, Minister, is warm words. They want action so that they can live normal lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now come to the final speaker in the open debate, Sarah Boyack, again, around 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Supporting the most vulnerable people in our society at the early stage of their lives is absolutely vital if we're going to improve people's well-being and living standards across Scotland. So I want to thank Michael Mara for securing today's debate. Unfortunately, due to the lack of funding by the SNP government, children with additional support needs are paying the price because our councils have faced a decade of underfunding, meaning massive pressure on education and local support services from the third sector. And it's an issue that parents have raised with me directly, and I heard from them at an Inspiring Disabilities event the pressures local charities, our services and parents face. Now, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child says that children with ASN, as well as their carers, have the right to special care and support during the child's growth and development. But as Michael Mara highlighted, the need for support does not stop once the school year is finished. And if anything, children with ASN and their families or carers require more and not less support outside of term times. But we suffer from a significant lack of consistent, accessible and affordable summer activities for children with ASN. And I want to thank the Edinburgh Repair Network for their excellent briefing. Repair stands for Robust Engagement with Parents for ASN and Inclusion Reform. And if you look at Edinburgh, holiday hubs are a fantastic scheme organised by the City of Edinburgh Council, but we don't have them at the scale needed. Only 260 of the 460 applicants were able to get places last year, and they received at most 16 days from 9 to 3 of holiday hub care. And that means parents are struggling to balance off childcare responsibilities and work obligations. Massive pressures, and I think the comments that Michael Mara made about the need for more information and support are key. Studies have shown that children with ASN mostly just want to feel included, and the summer holidays bring isolation and boredom and social exclusion. And that means that those young people and their working parents are going to struggle to get the opportunities that those young people need. And it means working parents are struggling to work around their jobs to care for their kids. And carers of children with ASN often experience burnout and isolation due to these increased pressures. A study by Shared Care Scotland on holiday activity provision for disabled people and young people in 2020 cited that 96% of the respondents said that summer holidays were when they most needed support. So, as Jeremy Balfour said, we need action, not warm words. The Adult Carer Support Plan was introduced in 2016 under the Carers Scotland Act, which states that local authorities must provide support to unpaid carers. But State of Caring 24 found that just 20% of unpaid carers said they'd received an ACSP in the last 12 months. So we need action. We need action now. And the lack of funding is a key reason why we're not seeing the support parents and their children need. So I think Michael Mara's points about clarity on the additional funding mentioned is absolutely critical. I want to know what that means for the councils in my region, because the holidays are weeks away and parents and their children need support now. Increased investment, training and support for our carers, recognising and amplifying the vital role they play in safeguarding Scotland's public health, keeping our economy going and, crucially, giving our young people the support they need now so that they can achieve their potential. Everybody should be signed up for that, and the government needs to give the support now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Boyack. I now call on Natalie Donennis to respond to the debate. Minister, around 7 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'd like to thank Mr Mara for raising this issue and for leading the debate today, and thank all members for their contributions. And I really am sorry to hear of some of the accounts that people are reading out in relation to families' access to these services. The subject of support for children who have disabilities and additional support needs, be it during the school day or, as highlighted in this debate, outside of school hours, during the holidays and activities, is an important and an emotive one, and as demonstrated by the passionate contributions made by members of this Parliament. Now, I'd like to acknowledge concerns and respond to perhaps some of the points in the debate, and then finish off by setting out some of what we plan to address this. I hear very, very clearly the frustrations and the challenges experienced by parents and carers of children with disabilities and additional support needs, from accessing specialist services that both meet their expectations and provide quality experiences for their children, to finding employment opportunities that are sustainable and manageable around established care routines. I've also heard parents and carers express the challenge of finding and accessing the services they need to support them to work where it's possible, but also to allow time for a short break and to ensure equality of opportunity for their children to take part in activities and play. Excuse me. We know that where holiday activity provision is available, it plays a vital role in supporting both child and parental health and well-being, and has a disproportionately powerful impact on the lives of disabled children and families. And this can be extremely positive when the system is working well, but problematic when it does not. And despite these challenges, we also know there are many high-quality and well-established services being delivered across Scotland, many of which have been highlighted today. And I want to commend the good work of local authorities and the third sector in delivering that support for families. We know these services are often supported by parents and volunteers, and that takes dedication and time. However, I recognise that more must be done to ensure fair and consistent provision for children and families, acknowledging the postcode lottery which can sometimes exist, particularly in more remote and rural areas. And I do want to reaffirm this Government's commitment to getting it right for every child. As we have noted throughout the debate, there are statutory duties placed on local authorities by the Children's Scotland Act 95 to provide care as is appropriate to children in need, in their area, outside school hours or during the holidays. Local authorities do have that statutory duty to consult at least once every 2 years with parents and carers of children within their area, and providing appropriate care and to prepare and publish plans in relation to the provision of such care. Now, this working well should help in relation to the delays in the planning ahead that members are raising. And following consultation, if local authorities do have concerns with what they are finding, they are expected or able to bring those to government to discuss. Now, of course.
Pam Duncan-Glancy.
I thank the Minister for taking that intervention, and if you'll forgive me, I pressed the wrong button to indicate the intervention, but thank you for taking it anyway. The point about the consultation with parents are telling me across Scotland, but particularly in Glasgow, that they don't feel engaged in local authority decisions about support for their children with additional support needs. What is the Government doing to monitor how local authorities are engaging parents in this?
Minister,
well, I am disappointed to hear that point, and what I'll say is what I'm going to say at the end in relation to what Government are doing will directly address that point, I think. Now, local consultation should help local authorities understand the specific needs of families with a child who has a disability or additional support needs. I know that in Dundee, for example, they've undertaken work to map their term time and holiday services, which shows where providers can deliver a service for children with additional needs. However, as pointed out by members, this isn't happening the same way across all local authority areas, and that will be something that needs addressed. As Mr Mara has noted, to support local authorities to deliver provision for children in the holidays this year, I am pleased to note we have committed within our programme for government to provide that additional £1 million of funding targeted at holiday play schemes and activities for children with a disability. And this investment will be distributed across local authorities and is for delivery this summer. I hope that is a measure that Mr Mara and members across the chamber will welcome.
Jeremy Balfour.
Thank you, and can I thank the Minister. I welcome that announcement, Minister. I wonder, would you also commit to meet with COSLA as soon as possible before the summer holidays to find out what is actually happening on the ground and what extra help the Scottish Government can give to those local authorities for this summer?
Always through the Chair. Minister.
So, again, I think what I'm going to touch on at the end of my speech will directly address that point, but also I have regular meetings with my COSLA spokesperson, Councillor Tony Buchanan, and I'm more than happy to discuss this issue with him in my next meeting, arranged, I believe, in due course. As a government, we are absolutely committed to building a system of school-aged childcare which works to meet the needs of all children, families and communities. And through our investment to date, we are funding projects to learn what is needed to provide high-quality, affordable activities and childcare provision for children with multiple and complex disabilities, as well as children with additional support needs. This includes projects within our Access to Childcare Fund and our early adopter communities in Fife, Shetland, Glasgow, Clackmannanshire, Inverclyde and Dundee. Now, projects like SHIP have been supporting families of children with profound and multiple learning difficulties for years, and our funding since 2020 is helping to support children and parents to access a reliable and high-quality service round about the school day and in the holidays. Now, understanding the specific needs of families and children with disabilities or additional support needs through early delivery of services is a key part of the work of the School-Aged Childcare Programme. From our learning to date, we know this often takes individual and creative solutions to ensure a service is the right fit for a child and their family. Now, our reporting processes will help to develop a picture of the number and the proportion of families accessing childcare and family support services who have children with disabilities or additional support needs. And again, I really hope that this will help to respond to some of the concerns that have been highlighted here today. In addition to this investment in learning, my officials are beginning to work with partners across local government to understand the range of approaches that are being taken to implement their statutory duties, working through an improvement lens and by identifying the opportunities to strengthen existing approaches across local authorities. We will move towards a position that ensures families have the support they need, regardless of where they reside in Scotland. Do I have time, Presiding Officer? Yeah.
Michael Mara.
I appreciate the Minister giving way and for the time. I know the Minister would like to welcome Nicola Donnelly, my constituent, to the gallery. Unfortunately, she missed my opening speech due to the changeover in the audience. But I really appreciate the tone the Minister's taken in terms of the proactive approach she's taken on this. I think what is particularly concerned to me is about this issue about timing and forward notice. So if I can emphasise that in her discussions with officials, that people have to be able to plan. Would you consider, for instance, a charter for local authorities of best practice to allow them to let them plan, to allow families to plan, to give them the details that they require and to make it easy around funding? Some simple checklist to make sure that local authorities are meeting that and a best practice approach across the country.
Minister, and give the time back.
I'm happy to consider all options. Of course, Mr Mara will know that I can't commit to anything in the chamber, but as I've said, we are embarking on work with local government, between local government and Scottish Government, to try to find a solution to this. And as I've said, I've committed to raising this issue in my next meeting with Councillor Tony Buchanan. So once again, I'd really just like to thank Mr Mara for bringing this motion for debate today. It is and will continue to be an important and challenging issue, but one that, with local authorities at the forefront of delivery, we must collectively work to resolve.
Thank you very much, Minister. That concludes the debate, and I suspend this meeting of Parliament until 2:30.